¿A dónde está papi? 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 ¿A dónde está papi?
Welcome to the Wednesday stream. Almost forgot what day it was. I hope everyone's having an awesome Wednesday morning. Okay. Today we have quite the amount of news to cover. So let me make sure we got everything going here. I've also been working a lot on the stream workflow, so hopefully things go a little bit smoother. we've got a new Becca's Fear video, so we're going to try to check that one out. So let's make sure we get that started as quickly as possible. Amazon Fresh, which is a subsidiary of Amazon, I guess what the equivalent would be of like what Whole Foods is, I guess. I'm not quite sure. Actually, let me just establish that correctly. Okay, so Amazon Fresh is just a grocery, same great grocery delivery service from Amazon. Okay, just to make sure. Hey, Thandera, how's it going? Is this walking in and the grab thing? Yeah, I think so. You just kind of pick up groceries same day, or have it delivered. It's like it's a grocery service from Amazon. Would be the easiest way to describe it. Surprise, surprise. Amazon being accused again of retaliation for union drive. Last week, 26-year-old Kaylin Richards received an automated email. Imagine being like reprimanded. No, that literally nobody asked for that. True. Imagine getting an email from a automatic like robot system reprimanding you. That's a good meme. Received an automated email informing that she was terminated from her job at Amazon Fresh grocery retail store in Seattle. Oh, I'm sorry. You didn't get reprimanded via email. You got fired via email. Much better. Much better. Earlier that week, Richards had spoken to one of her managers about the clerical problems she was having with the attendance time clock, as she was erroneously docked attendance points, though she noted that she never missed shifts or used paid time off if doing so. A manager reassured her that the clerical errors made clocking in and out through the app would be resolved. Last week, Richards continued working as usual without any problems, even noted that she discovered glass in a tray of fish after a portion of the glass window in the deli had broken. Then the day after her last shift, on a Wednesday night, Richards realized that she had been locked out of the A to Z Amazon system. I had not missed any of my shifts here, or I used PTO to cover it, to have an app lock me out of it, and to not even receive communication from Amazon Fresh is kind of mind-boggling. Yeah, like I said, imagine being fired just via email. How horrible. How horrible is that? I think there's got to be some type of regulation that should be employed where if you have automated systems and there is a situation where the automated system is, I don't know, like firing people, maybe there should be a failsafe where a actual person has to evaluate it and make the final decision instead of being fired via robot, right? Like if it's something so serious as like losing your job, there should be regulations where a manual review has to be done when it comes to firing somebody. Mestophiles, the real robot war will just be them firing us all. True. That's the real Judgment Day from Terminator. The real Judgment Day from Terminator is when all the robots revolt and start firing us indiscriminately. Quote, to talk to the manager about accruing those points and having him reassure me that it was already taken care of, then to proceed with my shift and then to be locked out by a robot is kind of crazy. No, it's kind of Amazon. That's about it. In the Amazon warehouses, it's the same thing, is it not? If you don't meet your picking goals, it will reprimand you or give you points, and eventually, when you can't keep up the ever-increasing picking rate goal, it will fire you via app. Via app. Hey Astro, how's it going? Richards has argued that her firing is in retaliation for her supporting union efforts at her Amazon Fresh store. Her firing has also jeopardized her housing security as she has been living on a youth program and needs pay stubs to prove steady employment in order to be placed into an apartment. Yeah. Jesus, how horrifying is that? How horrifying is that where you find yourself in a situation that clearly you need help, right? You need help, like, to make sure that you have housing and whatnot, and your employer jeopardizes all of that. Hey, Lee Spanner, how's it going? Texting from Montauk, New York, near the Tappan Zee Bridge, Hudson River. Howdy, howdy. This is the exact reason why things such as food, housing, education, and healthcare just shouldn't be dependent on, things like, I don't know, employment status. Things like your healthcare shouldn't be determined on whether or not you have a job. The fact that this program requires you to have pay stubs just to make sure that you have housing is just not fair. Workers at Richard's Amazon Fresh grocery store in Seattle with 150 employees are currently seeking union recognition from Amazon whilst organizing support among coworkers to form Amazon Workers United. Nice. The organizing drive has faced significant opposition from Amazon. Yeah, no, we've seen what lengths Amazon will go to union bust. We've seen that, and we've covered several of these union busting drives. And do you think Amazon will ever allow a union? I don't think it's up to them. I think they'll fight tooth and nail until until they can't. But I don't think it's going to end up being up to them. If there is such a overwhelming vote, especially with the ones that are happening, I want to say New York and the Bessemer, Alabama warehouse that's going to do another re-election. At that point, I don't think it's really up to them. The organizing I mean, like I said, they'll fight tooth and nail. They may dispute the results. They may like try whatever legal avenues that they may have. But at the end of the day, if there's like a overwhelming support to join the union, and it show and it manifests itself in that election, I don't think that afterwards they can do much about it once it's a done deal. The organizing drive has faced significant opposition from Amazon, which refuses to recognize the union. Several unfair labor practice charges have been filed with the NLRB, alleging retaliation to union organizing, including claims Richards was fired in retaliation for supporting the union. Right, but like this is the thing. Like a lot of times when they do stuff like this, they will let you go or fire you, not because you're trying to organize or you support an organization of a union. No, they'll say something like, oh, they violated company policy because on this day they took 10 seconds longer in their break than they needed to. And that's considered time theft or whatever excuse. And that's how they do it. They can't explicitly say, we're firing you because you supported a union drive. No. We're firing you because you violated company policy. Having a body to protect people from abusive management would be very helpful. Nova Rune, a trans woman who has worked at Amazon Fresh since October and noted that she has been misgendered multiple times at work and management isn't properly educated on discriminatory issues. Yikes. Amazon opened the Amazon Fresh grocery store in 2020 and it's currently expanding its retail stores in the US. Around the country. In addition to operating about 500 Whole Foods stores in the U.S., there are currently no formally recognized unions representing workers at any Amazon grocery locations. Though three Amazon warehouses, one in Alabama and two in New York City, are in the process of holding union elections, which that again could be the momentum needed for a much bigger unionization effort. Didn't Amazon literally put fake ballot boxes out for union votes once? I'm not sure. But what I am sure of is that they engaged in illegal activity, which the NLRB recognized. So much so that the Bessemer, Alabama one is holding a re-election because they were messing with that election. I don't know, if that means putting fake ballot boxes, but definitely they went out of their way to make sure that they tilt the results. And according to the NLRB, they absolutely fudged that election, so they're doing another one. That I am aware of. And Joseph Fink has worked at the Amazon Fresh store in Seattle since before it opened in July. He previously worked at Whole Foods and several other grocery stores. He explained forming a union had been a topic of discussion among workers since the store opened, but the efforts became more organized when Amazon was forced. Amazon was forced. Poor Amazon was forced to post notices to employees company-wide affirming their union organization rights as part of a settlement with the NLRB at the end of December. Right, this is probably because of their illegal practices. Sometimes there's a disconnect between ideas in a boardroom and on the ground in the trenches. Really? Yeah. We don't have an on-site human resource team. I've sent emails, I've sent multiple HR cases, and there's no response. Yeah, because Amazon doesn't care. He argued that there are many policies where workers are yelled at for minor infractions, and the most vulnerable workers are the most susceptible to being disciplined and terminated for policies such as the point-based attendance system, or subject to sexual harassment in the workplace without any action from management or corporate. That's a giga yikes. Oh, yikes. The punishment is like a slap in the wrist, really. It's like, yeah, you pay this like small fine and like don't do that again. That's really bad, Amazon. Don't do it. And that's the extent of the punishment. They pay a fine and they are forced to put more like documentation in their facilities saying that you have a right to organize and whatever. Basically, that's really not much of a punishment, really. Fink described one manager verbally and verbally and sexually harassing multiple employees without reprimand, including making sexually explicit remarks towards Fink in the workplace. Holy yikes. That's pretty gross. Fink also claimed that he was verbally reprimanded for posting union flyers in the break room, which were removed. Amazon Workers United first went public several weeks ago and have notified the company of their demands. They include raising the store's minimum wage to $25 an hour, an employee discount in line with what is offered to Whole Food employees, an improved dress code, a fair attendance policy, chairs for cashiers, sexual harassment training, and access to the food the store throws away or composts. Nice. I mean, like, I think that's like pretty bare minimum. I would say like a good living wage, at least to be able to kind of stay afloat. Improved dress code. Training for sexual harassment, because clearly it's a problem. A fair attendance policy, that seems fair. And access to food that they throw away or compost anyways. I don't see the problem here. It's basically asking for like the bare minimum. There's a culture of fear about basic interaction with employees. You can be reprimanded, and that type of culture of fear has made it hard to have any conversation about a union at all. Added Fink, I'm not afraid Jeff Bezos doesn't scare me. Well, to be fair, I don't think Jeff Bezos is the current CEO, is he? Is he still like... I thought he stepped down. I forget. It's irrelevant. Hey, Elio, how's it going? Howdy. He stepped down. Thank you. Okay, perfect. Yeah, I thought so. A spokesperson for Amazon denied the claims of retaliation in regards to Kaylin Richards' termination. These claims of retaliation are false in our attendance policy. Yeah, oh, okay. Yeah, I told you, folks. They never say that it's in retaliation for attempting to form a union. It's always some type of company policy violation, right? In this case, quote, our attendance policy is applied consistently to all employees in our store. We encourage employees who have questions about the policy to speak to their managers or HR partners, except this person already did so. Multiple times. Yeah, so that's how they get you. Oh, so-and-so is starting a union? Okay, let's check how many minutes over their break. Are they taking the appropriate time? Are they coming in a minute late? Are they overstaying for one split second? Just trying to find whatever company policy violation that they could possibly make up to fire you. That's how they do it. They don't explicitly, they can't explicitly fire people for retaliation purposes, especially when it comes to forming or organizing a union. They just find ways around it, such as this. In regards to the union drive, the spokesperson added, our employees have a choice of whether or not to join a union, and they haven't chosen to do that at the store. I wonder why. The opinion of a few individuals do not reflect, Jesus Christ, do not reflect the majority of our employees. Our focus remains on working directly with our team to make Amazon a great place to work. Yeah, okay. This is great corpo speak. The allegations and the charges filed with the NLRB are false, and we look forward to showing that through this process. Okay. They just built an Amazon warehouse in Detroit, and I know people who are actually happy because they want a job. I mean, I get that. Such is the system we live in, right? Such is the system that we live in. Unfortunately, in order to survive and put food on the table, I mean, they'll take it, they'll rationalize it by saying, well, it's a job, Yeah, it does suck. It does suck that this is a system in which we are forced. Or I guess, not propagandized, but we've just kind of accepted the fact that like something like this is actually considered a good thing instead of being like, well, what kind of job? Is it going to pay a living wage? What benefits do they have? Are they going to treat me right? Like a human being? TLDR, Amazon is back at it again with their union busting efforts. I would say honestly, there definitely needs to be some type of like extra layer of protection if you are to have automatic systems that fire people. If you're to have automatic systems that fire people via email, via a little app, I think that there should be regulations where a real person has to confirm that that's actually the case. Because how shitty is that? Where you just like get fired via email. That's just not right. Here's a good meme. California man, wanted by the FBI for his role in the insurrection, has been granted asylum in Belarus. Yeah. U.S. citizen Evan Newman has received refugee status in Belarus. The document was handed to him today in the Department of Citizenship and Migration of Internal Affairs Directorate of the Brest Regional Executive Committee read a statement shared by the Belta News Agency. I feel safe in Belarus. Yeah, I bet you do. I bet you do. Firing people over Zoom. That's true. I mean, like, even then, at least in a Zoom call, generally speaking, there's like an option for video. So you can kind of like face to face a human being is actually going to, tell you that you are not no longer working in the company. Still kind of shitty, but not as shitty as an automatic, system firing you over email, Wait till he realizes he doesn't have his freedoms over there. Oh, no. These folks clearly want it. Clearly want it. This is their home. Quote, I feel safe in Belarus. It's calm. I like it in this country. Today I'm experiencing mixed feelings. I'm glad that Belarus has taken care of me, and I'm upset that I wound up in this situation that in my own native country there were such problems. No, hold on. This is another example. Like, these people are just incapable at all. Just incapable. They're just incapable of acknowledging any kind of personal responsibility. Every single time these people come up with something, they always they always do the opposite of that. Like, when they claim about like freedoms, they really don't mean that. When they talk about like democracy, they don't really mean that. When they talk about personal responsibility, they don't really mean that. Like, this dude is literally twisting himself into mental like pretzels. Is doing some hardcore like Olympic levels of mental gymnastics to avoid taking any type of personal responsibility. Oi, nobody told you to go there January 6th, okay? You made that decision. You followed the Pied Piper. You decided to do an insurrection, or join an insurrection, I guess. You decided to assault police officers. I bet it'll piss off Belarusian authorities and be in prison within a year. Maybe. Or maybe he's right at home. I mean, like, these far-right folks seem to gravitate towards each other, these authoritarians. I mean, this is his home. Newman was charged on 6 different accounts last July, including violent entry, assaulting police officers, but he was already in the wind, having reportedly sold his house and absconded first to Ukraine and then Belarus last August. Jesus. So this guy had an escape plan and rode out. What a coward. What a coward. Can't even accept the responsibility of his actions. Can't stomach himself to face the music. In November, he turned up on Belarusian state TV begging for political asylum, telling a wild story about how he navigated swamps and quicksand as well as snakes and wild boar to make it into the promised land, according to him, is Belarus. Okay, buddy. Listen. As fantastical as that sounds, I'm going to press X to doubt and say that maybe some of those claims were a little bit exaggerated. In a segment that began by claiming that Newman had just tried to make America great again. Damn, that's very interesting. I wonder, like, who could have possibly put those ideas in his head? Make America great again. Where have I heard that before? Where have I heard that before? I just, I'm just having trouble. Just kind of, it's at the tip of my tongue. Who could have possibly put this idea in his head of, quote, making America great again? We need to stop calling them writers, call them what they are, domestic terrorists. True. This guy in particular definitely is. He probably took a plane to the capital and then to Belarus. Yep. Hamather. The answer is Donald Trump, of course. Yes. To make America great again, the fugitive domestic terrorist had gone to the capital that day for the sake of his children. Again, who could have possibly continued, even before the election happened, continued to put this idea in people's heads, into his followers' heads, that there was an existential threat to the country, that it was going to be rigged, that you had to fight for your country. For the sake of your future. Interesting. Quote, I do not believe I have committed any crime. One of the accusations was very upsetting. It is alleged I hit a police officer. That is baseless. Yeah, I don't believe you, buddy. There's plenty of video evidence to suggest that there was hundreds of police officers who were assaulted. So I'm sorry, dude. There's so much video out there. It would not be hard to verify that. He went on saying that he was asking for government protection in Belarus because of political persecution he was experiencing in the US, which involved the FBI releasing a photo of him and questioning his family on his whereabouts. Well, yeah, because you're a fugitive. Yeah, you're a fugitive who refuses to take any responsibility for the actions that you did. You just can't stomach to face the music, you absolute coward. And this is a tacit admission that's deep down, he knows that he did something wrong. Otherwise, like, what is the impetus of fleeing if you did nothing wrong? What is the driving force? Because he didn't just, like, take off. There was some kind of planning that had to have been involved, right? Especially, like, selling a house doesn't just happen in one day, right? It's not just running, but it's the act of, like, him already preparing, because you don't just, like, pop up and sell the home in, like, one day, right? Like, the day of, he's like, oh shoot, I gotta get money and just sell the house. No, this was planned. This had to have been planned. Selling of a house is a process. like buying tickets, getting all this together. That's planning, my friends. That's right. If you can't do the time, don't do the crime. Yeah, like I'm just basically memeing on this guy because like these folks always talk about how it's so important to have personal responsibility and take like and just face the music when you have action when you when you suffer the consequences of your own actions. And this guy is it just can't face that fact at all. Correct. He had to start this long before the actual insurrection. Correct. Because like I said, there's just no way that you just get up one day and sell the house immediately and get your money immediately to be able to do this, right? It's an entire process, and the money, even the money itself, it's like you have to wait, and it goes through certain hoops when it comes to selling a house. Correct. Even if you have an immediate buyer, even if you had the buyer that day, it would still take months, or at least, at the very least, like from what I understand, it could take let's say things go really quickly. I would say a month or so. Yeah, about like maybe a month or so. Let's say like the fastest, everything goes right. You get immediately the buyer gets immediately approved. Um, then they go through the bank loan process, whatever. That takes a couple of weeks, and they get the finalization. They go through all this process. About a month later is when you would finally finally be at the end game, at the finish line for closing. Usually, I mean, I could be wrong, but at the quickest, it could be like a month and something. The confirmation hearing is live again. How many days will they do this? I forget how long a confirmation thing is. Is it as long or as short as they want it? I don't know, to be quite frank. Anyways, this is a good meme. So I guess to all the January 6th, like, insurrectionists, if you want to live out your authoritarian fantasies, just go seek out asylum in Belarus, I guess. We can tune in for a bit. Let's see what's going on.
Hi, we are Woodger.
Whoa, Jesus.
First question.
Oh my
Did you
God.
continue to do debate competition?
Continue into
Yeah, I mean, were you
college.
doing that in school and college?
I did not do it in college. No, I did it from middle school through high school,
Okay.
and stopped when I graduated.
Yes.
I did too, and I recall with that we would get assigned a topic that wouldn't necessarily be one that we.
Yes. Excuse me, ma'am. It is known that you are a known debate lord. Is that true?
I think I did that once in one competition. I did original oratory, which is
Okay.
where I wrote my own speech.
Okay, you've had an opportunity to debate a lot as a defense counsel, I would assume, in the court of law when you're debating a position. And the reason I ask that question is that yesterday when Senator Kennedy was asking you about the expanding the court, or what we call court packing, you said, I haven't really thought about it, but I hear the arguments on both sides. And I hear the argument on both sides. So could you briefly describe to me your perception of the arguments on both sides?
My understanding of the argument is about whether or not to expand the court beyond
Wait, what?
9 justices.
Why? What is this relevant? How is this relevant to anything? Does the Supreme Court have like a hand in actually expanding the court? Why would it matter? Listening to GOP questions is like reading every culture war talking point. Yeah, and furthermore, I think like even the Democratic Party has kind of dropped that issue anyways. Like, what is the point of even asking this line of questioning? Even asking this line of questions? Like, the Democratic Party isn't on a massive drive to try to expand the Supreme Court, and furthermore, that job isn't up to the Supreme Court. I believe that's Congress's jurisdiction. I believe that's under Congress's powers, right? Get rid of the some debate bros, bring in the sisters. Yeah, that's why I said debate lords. Because it doesn't really matter, does it? Gals pals and M pals can all be debate lords.
Senator Whitehouse's presentation made a comment about how Rhode Island.
Oops, sorry.
Graphic to display. I went back, I think that New Jersey is 6 times the size of Rhode Island by square miles. North Carolina is 36 times the size of Rhode Island. And before my friends from Texas chime in, I would let them know that if Alaska were 2 states, they'd be the 3rd largest state. So I'm decided to use the White House format for dark money so that we have a balanced understanding of the fact that our proceedings here, the aspirations for the court, there is an ecosystem out there on both sides. As a matter of fact, we had a judicial nominee who actually participated in this ecosystem. I think you could reasonably assume if they participated in that ecosystem that they probably would have been an activist judge. The point that I make here
yes.
is that
what?
seen.
Why bring up the point of like activist judges when your party was the one who brought in at the very last second, shoved through Amy Coney Barrett? I don't see the relevance of this at all. Yeah, they've been asking her questions about things that Congress controls. Yeah, like, okay.
With respect,
I have not, Senator. I've
Okay.
never seen most of those.
That's good enough for me. I wouldn't expect you to be honest, sitting on the bench. But they are out there, and they have a specific plan. And their specific plan, as a matter of fact, I was inspired by Senator Whitehouse's seat, so I went out to demand justice. They have a specific plan.
What?
Step 1, 4 seats on the Supreme Court. We must add 4 seats on the Supreme Court to restore balance, which
Wait,
by their
who?
opinion is a majority with their view and their judicial philosophy. They're thrilled that President Biden has promised to appoint a commission. In fact, they're so thrilled that they want to make sure that they can influence the outside of the commission.
Okay, hold on.
But-
If he's talking about, because this guy is, first of all, Tom Tillis, good meme. Second of all, to my understanding, they did look into it because obviously the president actually can't do that unilaterally. The president has no power to expand or reduce the court. That is Congress's job, or that is within one of the things that Congress themselves control. And but they did look into it, from what I understand, and even President Biden came out and said, "Look, we looked into it, not good," and then moved on. And even Nancy Pelosi said that she's not going to bring that into the table. Like, she's not going to bring that to table. That's just not a thing that's going to happen. So I don't know what the point is on harping on something that's just not going to happen. Okay.
We've tracked some of the fundraising and support in re-elections. They're engaged and they're influenced by it. But let me tell you what
Yes, there's a lot of dark money influencing in politics. Good job. And, like, what is the point of this?
Ultimate destruction of two institutions. Back in January, Senator Schumer laid a vote down on the floor that ultimately would have reduced the majority of 60, the filibuster limit of 60 to 51. He was doing it as a way to pass a single bill, but we all know what happened when Senator Reid nuked the executive calendar for circuit court judges. It led to you only being subject to 51 votes to be confirmed. That nuked the executive calendar. In January, Senator Schumer was laying the groundwork for the same thing. Now, I worry that that's the destruction of the Senate institution as far as I'm concerned. I think we have to be a consensus-based.
Yeah, he's really, really worried about the Senate institution that's destroyed. Ah, yes, that's a good meme. Hey, Mono, how's it going? He's very worried about a broken institution already. That's a good meme.
I signed on to a letter with more than 60 members to say that I would never do that in the face of in the face of a Republican president whose policies I supported. I did that to send a very clear message. I respect this institution, and I respect the court, which almost certainly would have been, we would have had pressure from our side of the aisle to pack the court a little bit more. Now, every member who was here back when we signed that letter, who's on this committee, changed their position and voted to potentially nuke the filibuster just 2 months ago. So I hope you can understand my concern about the political winds and the potential damage that it could do to the Senate and do to...
Wait. I'm sorry. Does the Supreme Court have, like, jurisdiction or, I guess, power over what happens in the Senate? What? Let's say it's true and she gets nominated. First of all, it's not going to make a difference between, it's not going to make a difference for the 6-3 majority that they have already as it is. And second of all, does the Supreme Court have any bearing on what happens in the Senate procedures? To my understanding, the answer to that question is no. And again, why is this absolute clown bringing up a dead in the water plan that has, again, nothing to do with the Supreme Court? This is Congress's job. To a Supreme Court nominee. Okay.
Big Five consulting firm ceased to exist because their reputation suffered. If we pack the court, the only thing that you all have, that the Supreme Court has, is its integrity and the esteem that the American people and the trust that they put into it. Packing the court could cause the Supreme Court to lose the trust of the American people. And I think if we want to expand the court, let's do it for the only valid reasons. Maybe the justices come to us and the Chief Justice come to us and say, the workload is too great. The times have changed.
No.
And then convince 60 members of this body to consider it.
Okay, but that's not the Supreme Court isn't going to make a decision on whether or not the court itself is expanded. And furthermore, wasn't there multiple times in history where the court indeed was bigger and or smaller? There were times in history where the Supreme Court was different in number and size. I'm pretty sure that had no bearing on the quote trust. No, dude, you don't get it as a piece of paper? Yeah. I didn't consider that. That's true. Sorry. Oh, man. Yeah, there you go. That's a piece of paper right there. There you go. Yeah, people still believing in courts. And furthermore, if you are really so caring about the institution of the courts, then why is your party, because clearly the Republican Party is the one that's having this issue, refusing to accept the court's decisions when it came to the election? The numerous court decisions that were done, ruling against Donald Trump, why didn't they just accept that decision? Yeah, well, he can't just outwardly saying that. He can't just outwardly say that.
Pro-choice advocates. Because as I understand it, I think the underlying law in Massachusetts was ultimately struck down unanimously by the Supreme Court. Is that correct?
Thank you, Senator. The brief that you...
Oh, by the way, I didn't expect you to respond to my riff on packing the court.
Yes.
Just to net it out, it's a bad idea. But back on this.
I understand. The brief
What?
that you are referencing...
Oh, by the way, I just spent a whole bunch of time wasting everybody's time on something that's
right
not going
after
to
finishing my
materialize,
Supreme
and
Court.
it wasn't the question anyways.
This is maybe 2000, at the end of my clerkship, and it is a First Amendment free speech set of arguments that the lawyers at my firm, I was a part of a team representing clients who wanted to make an argument about buffer zones, which at that time had not yet been litigated all the way up to the Supreme Court.
Was it a buffer zone that put pro-life and pro-choice people in the same buffer, or one that argued that pro-life people were in your face and perhaps needed a bit better, bigger buffer than the pro-choice? I was just trying to understand the facts of the case.
I believe that it was viewpoint neutral, meaning it wasn't about what the people were saying. It was about clearing a path to allow people to enter the clinic. Mm-hmm. The laws at the time were about how far did people have to be kept back, whether they were pro-life or pro-choice, because if they were blocking the entrance...
Do you understand why the underlying law was ultimately deemed unconstitutional by the Supreme Court?
I didn't follow the jurisprudence at that time. It had not been, and the First Circuit. This was a First Circuit brief. I don't remember what happened in the district court, but my clients wanted to argue in the First Circuit that the laws that allowed for the clearing of the path so that people could
Yeah, I
enter
think
the
the goal
clinic
would then
and
here
have
be
people
to
stand back.
continue to just be this clear, concise, to these folks, because I think that's the point. Because it's hard to believe that somebody like this guy doesn't know exactly what he's asking. So yeah, she should just continue to do what she's doing.
I'm not going to get into a debate, but on its face, it almost looked as if there was this notion that there was bad speech and good speech. That somehow, and look, I'm somebody who's had protesters come to my house, get in my face, and be very nasty 4 times by land and 2 times by sea. I live on a lake. Okay with them doing it as long as they stay off my lawn. In the last case, they didn't. But it almost felt like to me that those protesters who didn't like me needed to be a little bit further away than the protesters that maybe I would allow to be a little bit closer. It may not be right, but I'll make sure that I get my facts right before this afternoon in the second round. I want to go to sentencing.
What?
I'm not going to cover any of the ground
What is this?
that my colleagues have. I'm sympathetic to some of it, not necessarily all of it, because I think the details are something that we don't have possession of. I'm sure we're going to talk a little bit more about that. But I want to talk more about a pattern.
I don't know how
I
that would
know.
work out logistically,
and I
Bike
was
Shop.
really impacted by your description of family dinners and your uncles coming in uniforms and putting their guns up on the cupboard and having a sense of pride that you had family that served in law enforcement. There are a couple of cases. I'm very focused on law enforcement and backing the blue. I think that law enforcement, I talk with a lot of them, their morale is low. They feel like defund the police and some of these other efforts.
Oh man, Tendera, you are
already
100%
making a
correct.
very
This is
difficult,
literally
dangerous job
just
more difficult, more dangerous.
these are
There
just
have been a few cases where you have recommended
culture war
lower
talking points.
sentences that even I think the defense attorneys have. But I'm sure that if I were you and observing you yesterday, you would probably point to some mitigating circumstances or factors that are not necessarily available to the committee as a basis for doing that. I think in one case, the government recommended a 30-month sentence and the defense recommended 21 months and you gave them 18 months. And this was a third conviction for assaulting an officer. There was another
Yeah,
one
they just clipped this out and posted on Twitter. Done.
that was
Easy.
a lower
Abort the
sentence
blurb.
for
How's it going, ground level
there
news?
were
Howdy,
officer
howdy.
assaults, and it just seemed like it went lower. But I don't want to get into those because you may have
What?
factors that that you would point to that would justify the decision. I've got a question about. Now, see, that's at an atomic level. I mean,
Huh?
you're looking at the facts
Boy,
of the case.
can you
you're
stay
looking at
focused?
the defendant, and as you've
Focus,
described in some of
buddy.
the other
I have
cases
no idea
here,
what you're trying to.
you made a
All right,
judgment
that's
that
it.
you
I'm
thought
bored.
was fair.
I have no idea where he's going with this. So this was given to us. It's from that silly street mural. Huh. Let's check this one out. When I visited Iraq during the 2007 surge, I discovered that conventional wisdom in Washington usually lagged the view from field by 2 to 4 weeks. Something similar applies today, and analysts and commentators have grudgingly declared that the Russian invasion of Ukraine has been blocked and the war is stalemated. What? Are you sure about that? It seems to me like they've been reporting this from the beginning. I don't know. So why can't Western analysts admit as much? Or what? Most professional scholars of the Russian military first predicted a quick and decisive Russian victory, then argued that the Russians would pause, learn from the mistakes, and regroup, then concluded that the Russians would actually have performed much better if they had followed their doctrine, now tend to mutter that everything can change, the war is not over, and that the weight of numbers still favors Russia. Okay. Their analytic failure would be one of the elements in this war worth studying in the future. Hold on. I disagree. Wait. Based on the information that originally was had in hand, any and even military analyst, send it to me via whispers, ground level news. At the beginning, especially, given the information that we had, most military analysts were saying that just because purely what they had on hand, it was very possible that this would be an easy, decisive Russian victory. Then multiple blunders by the Russian side, that was not accounted for, changed the outcomes and therefore changed what they were saying. I don't get it. This is okay. Russia's already retreating in some areas. Yeah, that's true. It's true. Intelligence apparatus says that there's a stalemate. They also say foreign fighters are on the way to fight for Russia. Yes, and according to other sources, there's Belarus is allegedly getting ready to enter the fray too. I'm just not understanding what this guy's point is. At the same time, there are few analysts of the Ukrainian military, rather more esoteric speciality, and thus the West has tended to ignore the progress Ukraine has made since 2014. What? Nobody has, no serious analyst has just conveniently left this out. In fact, that was part of the pluses that was for Ukraine, was the fact that they had not only better training, but also the amount of specialized weaponry like anti-tank and anti-air like Stinger missiles and Javelin missiles was taken into consideration. So yeah, not only motivated, but well, also and also the motivation, because it's home field advantage. Ukrainians are not merely defending their strong points in urban areas, but maneuvering from and between them, allowing the Clausewitzian dictum that the best defense is a shield of well-directed blows. The reluctance to admit what is happening on the ground in Ukraine stems perhaps in part from the protectiveness scholars feel for their subject, even if they loathe on it on moral grounds, but more from a tendency to emphasize technology. The Russians have some good bits, numbers, which they dominate only though up to a point, and doctrine. The Russian army remains in some ways very cerebral, and intellectuals can too easily admire elegant tactical and operational thinking without pressing hard on the practice. Okay. For example, most modern military rely on strong cadre of non-commissioned officers. Sergeants make sure that the vehicles are maintained and exercise leadership in squad tactics. The Russian NCO Corps is today, as it has always been, both weak and corrupt. Without capable NCOs, even large number of technologically sophisticated vehicles deployed across, according to a compelling doctrine, will end up broken or abandoned, and troops will succumb to ambushes or break under fire. Okay. Morning. Remember, only you can prevent forest fires. True. Hey, how's it going, KTS Shine? Howdy. This just doesn't make any sense. Yeah, if you have any links, send it to me, by the way. The evidence that Ukraine is winning this war is abundant. If one only looks closely at the available data, the absence of Russian progress on the front lines is just half the picture, obscured though it is by maps showing big red blobs which reflect not what Russians control, but areas which they have driven. The failure of almost all Russians' airborne assault is its inability to destroy the Ukrainian Air Force and air defense systems, and well, I don't know if that's 100% true, as Russian planes still have the capability of making bombing runs, which they are still continuing to do so. And the weeks of long paralysis of the 40-mile supply column north of Kiev are suggestive. I mean, yeah, sure. Russian losses are staggering. Between 7,000 and 14,000 soldiers are dead, depending on your source, which implies a low end of the rule of the thumb about the ratios of such things. A minimum of nearly 30,000 taken off the battlefield by wounds, capture, or disappearance, such as a total would represent at least 15% of the entire invading force, though not to render most units combat ineffective. And there's no reason to think that the rate of loss is abating. In fact, the Western intelligence agencies are briefing unsustainable Russian casualties of 1,000 a day. So we're not discounting the fact that they're taking tremendous losses, and this could be basically grinding them to a halt. So what's the argument here? Add this to the repeated tactical blundering visible on videos, even to amateurs, vehicles punched up on roads, no infantry covering flanks, no closely coordinated artillery fire, no overhead support from helicopters, and panicky reactions to ambushes. The one-to-one ratio of vehicles destroyed to those captured or abandoned bespeaks an army that is unwilling to fight. Yes, we knew that from the beginning. We had massive reports of the first waves of these folks are conscripts. They had no will, and some of them reportedly even had no idea that they were even going to be in a combat situation. Russia's inability to concentrate its forces on one or two axes of attack or to take a major city is striking. So too are its massive problems in logistics and maintenance, carefully analyzed by technically qualified observers. So yes, we are acknowledging these things. The Russian army has committed well more than half of its combat forces to the fight. Behind those forces stands very little. Russian reserves have no training to speak of, unlike the U.S. National Guard or Israeli and Finnish reservists, and Boone has vowed that the next wave of conscripts will not be sent over. Although he is unlikely to abide by that promise, the swaggering Chechen auxiliaries have been hit badly, and in any case are not used to or not available for combined armed operations. And domestic discontent has been suppressed, but bubbles up as brave individuals protest and hundreds of thousands of tech-savvy young people flee. If Russia is engaging in cyber war, that is not particularly evident. I don't know when this was written. But there have been several cyber attacks to Ukrainian infrastructure, especially the pre-invasion. The FBI, this was 2 days ago. Okay, the FBI has noticed an uptick in network scanning, which could be a indication that Russians may be getting ready to do cyber attacks against us. It is possible. So I'm not sure that this is true too. And there are negative indicators on the other side. No Ukrainian capitulations, no notable panic or unit collapses, and precious few local quislings, while the bigger Russophilic fish, such as the politician Victor I can't pronounce this, are wisely staying quiet or out of the country, and reports have emerged that local Ukrainian counterattacks and Russian withdrawals. That's true. So I don't understand. This has been acknowledged. I don't understand the point of this article. I think even Biden has acknowledged that, of the gains of the Ukrainian military. I don't understand. Okay. Astronomy's contribution to climate change rivals emissions from some countries. I did not know this. This is news to me, but it's good that we're acknowledging this problem here. Astronomers spend their careers looking up at the skyway from Earth, but now some stargazers say their field has to grapple with the fact that observing the cosmos is contributing to their home planet's climate emergency. A new estimate of greenhouse gas emissions linked to all ground and space-based telescopes in the journal Nature Astronomy says the annual carbon footprint of astronomy's research infrastructure is equivalent to about 20 million metric tons of carbon dioxide. Jeez. Just to give you some perspective, 20 million tons of CO2 is the annual carbon footprint of countries like Estonia, Croatia, or Bulgaria, says Jürgen Nolzer. I'm not going to be able to pronounce that. An astronomer at IRAP, an astrophysics laboratory in France. He and IRAP colleagues, including Annie Hughes and Luigi Tibaldo, got the idea to do this study while making an estimate of the greenhouse gas emissions from their own institute. The only missing piece of our assessment was the footprint of observational data, says Nolzer, whose own research, for example, has relied on observations made with Fermi Gamma Ray space telescopes. No study had ever tried to calculate the carbon emissions due to the construction and operation of all telescopes and space missions that astronomers used to make observations. And that's just what this research team set out to do. Data were sometimes hard to come by, but they did their best to approximate and tally up greenhouse gas emissions associated with nearly 50 space-based missions and 40 ground-based telescope facilities. Most prolific emitters were the biggest, most expensive observatories, such as the new James Webb Space Telescope and Square Kilometer Array, according to the report. By dividing up the total annual emissions by number of astronomers worldwide, the research figured that each astronomer's share of the profession's emission is about 36 metric ton per year. Nolzer points out that this is about the amount of emissions from driving an average car in France 165,000 kilometers or up to 100,000 miles. Jesus. And that's just from using the telescopes. It doesn't include things like scientists travel to conferences, supercomputing power, and office heating. For our lab, the total is actually about 15 tons of equivalent of CO2 per year per astronomer. Hughes believes that the astronomers need to set an example when it comes to action to mitigate climate change. If we as scientists do not react to reports and warnings from our colleagues, she says, then it's a bit like your dad telling you that you shouldn't smoke while he himself is smoking a cigarette. Why would you take his words seriously? That's a good point. The researchers urge space agencies and funders of astronomical research to commit to requiring an environmental assessment of every observed facility they support and making them public. Yeah, and that's a good point. And furthermore, if you know how much emissions this is actually causing, then there's room to adjust. What's more, they say until research can be made more sustainable through measures like renewable energy sources, one option to reduce emissions is to slow down the pace of building ever larger, more sophisticated new telescopes. Some of our colleagues are a bit shocked by this idea. What we really think is that these options must be on the table. The emergency we're facing is so big, and clearly we're playing a role in it with our work. The astronomers hope that our other scientific fields will be inspired to take a similar global inventory of greenhouse gas emissions from their research infrastructure. As far as I know, this is the first time, Nolzer says this is the first time that this kind of study has been done for any research field. Very interesting. This study is important because it draws attention to the contribution to astronomy to climate change, says Travis Rector, an astrophysicist at the University of Alaska Anchorage, who is one of the organizers of the group Astronomers for Planet Earth. I think that the overall picture is clear. We do have substantial emissions associated not only with the operation of our facilities, but also its construction. And this is something we've been aware of for some time, and there are efforts to try to reduce emissions associated with those. Yeah, I mean, the more, we aware of these issues we are, the better we could be equipped to find better sustainable ways of doing these things. Hey, Samurai the Kind Dragon, good morning, howdy. The better we are equipped to understand where we can make these changes, right? If we can make building materials more sustainable, if we can figure out ways of using renewable energy in certain areas, these are all ways we can improve. This is something we've been aware for some time, and there are efforts to try to reduce the emissions associated with those. Already, some observatories either use solar power or looking into greener energy options. A spokesperson for the National Science Foundation, a major funder of astronomy research, told NPR that we've explored and implemented clean energy alternatives such as installing solar panels at our Gemini North and South facilities, and we built the possibilities of future solar upgrades into the buildings. But just do them though, like, okay. Astronomers have also discussed the climate impact of travel to in-person professional conferences. During the pandemic, Rector notes, virtual conferences drew even more participants than past events, suggesting that there had been previously unrecognized barriers to participation. Yeah, I mean, like, and furthermore, if it's easier to just do this virtually, not only will you be able to reach out more people, but it also serves as a way to document and then distribute that once the conference is over. It's already it's all done in one step. So I think that's just as someone would call it, a win-win-win. This has been an opportunity to use for us as a profession to think critically about how it is we do our business. And there are ways that we can do it that reduce our carbon emission that actually make this more scientific and actually make this more scientifically productive. Even though, sorry, that was a question. Are there ways that we can do it that reduces our carbon emissions and actually make this more scientifically productive? I would say the answer to that is yes. Yes. Even though astronomy is a relatively small profession and many have less of a climate impact than some other human activities, it says that doesn't give us the right to say, well, this isn't our problem. We recognize that we need to be as part of the solution as well. Yeah, I mean, like, these are just kind of like the interpersonal, more individual kind of solutions that can be deployed by an institution such as astrology. I mean, I understand that it's small, but nonetheless, if you have these capabilities, then do so, right? If you have the capability to have more solar panels or to operate or build your astrology laboratory in a different manner using more sustainable methods, then you should. The government invests $5 million to turn the Rust Belt into the Lithium Belt. Oh boy, mixed feelings about this one. There are definitely mixed feelings. The Department of Energy has invested millions in battery manufacturing programs in Appalachia as part of the clean energy transition. All of these have a price though, right? The Department of Energy is launching a battery manufacturing program in West Virginia with a $5 million investment that could turn the Rust Belt... that could turn the Rust Belt into a lithium belt. Mixed feelings. DOA Secretary Jennifer Granholm and a cohort of federal officials, including Secretary of the Interior Deb Haaland and Senator Joe Manchin, traveled to Charleston, West Virginia to announce that it would begin a pilot training program in Appalachia to create good-paying union jobs in a region that has since been left behind by a dying coal industry. The goal, the agency said in a press release after the visit, is to build out an independent national supply chain for batteries and minerals that would be essential to renewable transition and to, quote, break U.S. dependence on China. American leadership in the global battery supply chain will be based not on our innovative edge, but also our skilled workforce of engineers, designers, scientists, and production workers. We should be building the supply chain here. It's not just building the supply chain, it's also making it sustainable and limiting the impact, the environmental impact, right? Because everything has a price. Everything has a price. Mining lithium has a price. There are ways of extracting lithium that don't involve something's going on outside. That's kind of weird. That don't involve such environmental destruction. There are ways of extracting lithium out of seawater. The heck is going on out there? Anyways, Graham said in a statement, we should be building the full supply chain here. In a part of the country where former fossil fuel towns are pockmarked with empty storefronts and lined by abandoned oil and gas wells, the DOA is making bets that renewable energy could offer a new way out from the economic tailspin. The plan expresses specifically an intent to target pilot programs in communities where energy and automotive industries once held sway. This community is embracing new chances and opportunity in their own way. Nobody's coming here to tell West Virginia what it should do because West Virginia is figuring it out and it's really exciting. Yeah, I need to see exactly what the exchange is when it comes to the environmental costs of doing this. There are ways of making closed-loop systems for batteries. There are better ways of obtaining, lithium as well. So we just have to make sure that we are not trading one way of harm for another. Oh, I heard a parade for you to stand outside of your door while you're streaming. Nice.
Please clap.
This program is part of a broader endeavor by the Federal Interagency Working Group on Coal and Power Plant Communities and Economic Revitalization that uses infrastructure dollars to build out jobs in 13 Appalachian states from Mississippi to New York. Other actions taken by working group member agencies, the Department of Interior announced funding for abandoned mine reclamation projects in West Virginia. The Environmental Protection Agency created 2 grants for job training and environmental cleanup in Huntington, and the Economic Development Administration announced a federal award for a former mining town in Kentucky. Yeah, again, it just depends on what the trade-off is going to be. I understand that at the end of the day, for us to be able to move along to a more renewable system, to more renewable systems, there are going to be prices up front, a price to pay up front in terms of emissions and stuff like that. But we also have to take into consideration what and how much, because if we're just gonna, destroy the environment further, I'm not sure where that becomes worth. Though the pilot program is specifically earmarked for workforce development, fragments of the energy industry have recently committed time to exploring the feasibility of extracting lithium from parts of Appalachia. Though most of the lithium industry in the U.S. is clustered in the West, particularly in Southern California, according to the USGS, one of 20 known lithium deposits in the U.S. surrounds Charlotte, North Carolina. In November, the region became part of an environmental justice debate after local mineral developer Piedmont Lithium Incorporated launched a bid to build 4 500-foot deep pit lithium mines, which was met by split reaction from residents. Plenty of folks in this rural pocket aren't willing to go that far. Reporter Mike Surahan wrote about the proposed mines in November. They don't want the persistent blasting, traffic, dust, and environmental degradation that comes with pit mining. That's what I'm saying. Like, there are prices to pay, and at that point, then you would have to evaluate whether or not that's worth it. And if it's like this, then it's just literally trading one bad for another, not netting a good, is what I'm trying to say. It's the kind of opposition that has dogged fossil fuel projects in the past, and it isn't going away because the projects now support clean energy such as electric vehicles. Right. In February, mineral extraction company American Resources announced it had discovered meaningful concentrations of lithium and cobalt in Central Appalachia. Lithium is also present in West Virginia coals and can be extracted from tailings left behind by now defunct coal plants. Last April, the DOE announced it was plugging $19 million into research for that too, a move that Granholm said in a press release at the time would put the very same fossil fuel communities that have powered our nation for decades at the forefront of the clean energy economy. The move that led to the creation of a research consortium at the Penn State University devoted to identifying stores of minerals that would be essential to renewable transition across Appalachia. We really don't have a database or an assessment of what is out there and how much of our demand can be met with these secondary resources. That's what's missing. It's very crucial for our industry to have a strategy for developing these resources and making them commercially extractable and available. Not only that, you have to make sure that when you commit and you're ready to make this, it's got to be as minimal impact as possible. There are ways of making closed loop systems to not just turn this into another, for all intents and purposes, fossil fuel kind of round. And furthermore, there are different ways of extracting lithium that don't involve pit mining. So, I mean, the area has also recently been the focus of other alternative energy proposals. Last month, a group of major fossil fuel companies announced a pact to build a hydrogen hub in Appalachia, prospect that a number of local environmental groups said only would require and enable further oil and gas production. Exactly, especially if it's blue hydrogen. Despite what these folks say, blue hydrogen is not clean fuel. But the tone of last week's announcement feels different to local environmental groups like the Ohio River Valley Institute told Motherboard in an email that the announcement was great news. Unlike some federal efforts such as those to develop blue hydrogen and to introduce carbon capture, which again is not only expensive but kind of useless, and gas-fired power generation, there is a stronger economic rationale and a market for cobalt-free batteries that suggests that the business and the jobs have a good chance of being viable for the long term, and the initiative helps West Virginia join the rest of the nation in benefiting from clean energy transition. Yeah. Like I said, I would want an extensive environmental assessment to make the determination of whether or not that's worth it. And I would also want to see how sustainable that would actually be in the long term, as they say, as they claim to care, you know. Alright, folks, let me take a second here. Oh no, Mr. Grassley.
Thank you, Senator. The federal sentencing guidelines are crafted to assist courts in making sentencing determinations within the broad range that Congress prescribes for cases, for crimes. So in the typical case, a defendant is convicted of some crime. In the federal system, they're usually very serious crimes. And Congress will say, judge, you can give that person a sentence anywhere between 0 and 20 years, for example. The sentencing guidelines are designed to set out a series of factors that judges should be looking at when they decide what they're going to sentence that particular person to. And those factors will be things like, if this is a violent crime, does the person have a weapon? If this is a violent crime, was there any injury? And so the judge is looking at these facts, in many cases horrible facts, and calculating the guidelines based on what we call enhancements. Each one of those different characteristics.
Is she having to patiently explain to Chuck Grassley how, like, sentencing works? Okay.
Judge has to calculate the guidelines in every case. That's how we start the process. But under the statutes, in addition to calculating the guidelines with all of those enhancements, the way our system now works is you determine what the guideline range of punishment is going to be. And then Congress says you look at a series of other factors in addition to the guideline range. And at the end of the day, the judges in the system now are choosing sentences based on both the consideration of the guidelines and also the consideration of the statutory factors that Congress has put forward.
Have you ever declined to impose an enhanced sentence on a defendant because you disagreed with the enhancement as a policy matter?
Thank you, Senator. Yes, and the reason is because of Supreme Court case law concerning the way in which the guideline system operates. The Supreme Court has determined in a case we discussed yesterday that the guidelines are no longer binding on judges, meaning the guidelines you calculate, but you don't have to stay in the guideline range anymore. That was the Supreme Court's Booker case. And I can't remember if it's in that case or in subsequent case law, but the Supreme Court has also made clear that when you are calculating the guideline range in the new system that we're in right now, judges are free, the Supreme Court has said, to decide in particular cases whether, as a quote-unquote policy matter, they disagree with a particular enhancement. That is the state of the law. That is what the Supreme Court has said judges are permitted to do in cases. And so I have, in certain cases, given the way in which the guidelines are operating, the disparities that are created in cases, I have at times identified various enhancements that I have disagreed with as a policy matter because the Supreme Court has said that that's the authority of a sentencing judge in our system.
Are nationwide injunctions constitutional?
What?
Well, Senator,
You vetoed them.
thank you for letting me address that circumstance. The reason why I paused is
She's giving way too much to this guy. Look, all she has to say is, hey, buddy, I mean, I suspect that you know this because, well, you've been here for decades in the Senate. So I suspect that you probably already know the answer to this question. Well, I'm just following Supreme Court precedent. If you disagree with the Supreme Court precedent, it is up to Congress to make new laws and new frameworks.
the remedy in the statute is to invalidate the rule. That's what Congress tells judges to do. Now, technically, that's not a nationwide injunction. That is invalidating a rule that the agency has enacted. It may have nationwide effects because the agency may have implemented its rule nationwide. But what the court is doing is not reaching out and touching everyone in the country. The court is directing the government that has promulgated that rule that the rule is invalid. And that's what the statute tells us we have to do in those cases. That's different than a nationwide injunction, because a nationwide injunction would be a situation in which we're not dealing with the rule, we're not dealing with the Administrative Procedure Act, we're dealing with a particular case in which something has happened between the plaintiff and the defendant, and the court says, based on what happened in this case, I'm going to tell everybody in the country that you can't operate in this way anymore. I'm going to find on the basis of this particular case, and I'm going to enjoin everyone in the country not to do that anymore. That's a nationwide injunction, which is not.
So patiently explaining what injunctions are to someone who clearly should know. Casual, okay. I wish this mattered. I wish your comment mattered, but kind of a cringe comment, dude. I like beer. I wonder what would happen if she said that as a response. Yeah, I remember Kavanaugh. Just so patient, explaining just something so, like, what should be simple to him. Something so simple that, in other words, something that should be simple to him. Some people think these questions are just to be condescending and inflammatory, but yet their men are also incredibly unqualified for their positions. Oh, you mean like the senators asking these questions? Yeah, maybe. That's true. Well, maybe. I may have to disagree for a second there, because like these folks supposedly were a lot of the senators who are asking these questions were lawyers. How's it going, Yellow King? How is that even a username you decided to put in the system? Yeah, I'm not even gonna acknowledge that.
Relatives, I think they were resident in the United States, and they had relatives in Yemen, a war-torn area. This is a few years ago, and they came to the court, me, asking if I could direct the administration to extract their relatives from Yemen. That they wanted me to order the executive branch to send in troops and get their relatives out, because it was obviously dangerous for their relatives to be in that country. And what I said in that circumstance is, essentially, I don't have jurisdiction to do that, because what you're asking me to do is a political question. That the question of when and where troops can be sent and who can be extracted from foreign governments belongs with the executive branch. And so you have to ask them. And so I said I have no jurisdiction. That's a political question doctrine, and it's well established in our law.
Yesterday, in response to a question from Senator Durbin, you said that as a judge, you are, quote, trying in every case to stay in your lane, and end of quote. That's the same time you gave us the 3 steps you go through as you work yourself through a case. You also described the text of law as a constraint on your authority.
What?
But in several cases, I'll list Make the Road New York, AFL-CIO versus Trump,
Oh,
Lauderdale,
no,
Marine
no.
Companies, and others, the D.C. Circuit reversed your decision or criticized your reasoning for failing to follow a clear and unambiguous text. Why didn't the clear text of the law constrain your authority in these cases?
Thank you, Senator. You mentioned 3 cases.
So patient.
Certainly with respect to the second one, the DC Circuit didn't say that the text was clear. And in fact, that's what happens in cases, that judges at the trial level do their best to make interpretations. In that case, it involved a channeling provision. This is AFG versus Trump. It involved a provision, a statute that was designed to channel the judicial authority into an agency. And I interpreted the statute, and I thought that the arguments that were being made, the claims that were being made, were not ones that Congress had intended to channel.
Senator Grassley, I have to ask, do you know what you're talking about when you ask these questions, or imagine if she responded that way. I would like you to go through the process with me so that we can understand if you understand how the judicial process actually works. That's a good meme. All right, we'll tune back in maybe at the end. Arctic sea ice peak in 2022 is 10th lowest on record. We're just going to go over this one very briefly. Arctic sea ice has reached its maximum extent for the year, peaking at 14.8 is that miles? 14.88 meters, square kilometers? On 25th of February, it is the 10th smallest winter peak in the 44-year satellite record. Yikes. The provisional data from the National Snow and Ice Data Center shows that this year's Arctic maximum extent was recorded, I think it's miles, isn't it? No. This is, km squared is kilometers, square kilometers. While the past 6 months have been fairly uneventful in the Arctic in general, Earth's other pole has been on record-breaking melt season. For the first time since this satellite record began, the Antarctic extent fell below 2 meters kilometers squared. 2 meters kilometers squared this year. Unusually, the Arctic winter peak and the Antarctic summer minimum occurred on the exact same day. The news comes as soaring heat waves have hit both the Arctic and Antarctic at the same time. The Guardian reports that the temperatures in Antarctica reach 40 degrees Celsius above normal, which is massive, and some weather stations in the Arctic hit temperatures 30 degrees Celsius above normal. Huge yikes. The NSIDC's announcement says that this year's Arctic maximum extent of 14.88 meters is 770,000 kilometers squared, smaller than the 1981 to 2010 average peak extent, ranking the 10th lowest maximum in the satellite record. Yikes. Not good, folks. Not good. We should first inhabit Antarctica. Maybe we have right-wingers and inhabit the Arctic. Well, to be frank, we shouldn't really be going to other... We shouldn't be thinking about even going to other planets if we can't even take care of this one. I can't believe how many tornadoes happened yesterday. Is it unusual that New Orleans had a tornado? Well, I'm not sure, actually. I know that I heard something about an unusual tornado event, that there's a string of tornadoes that were just bizarre. I suspect that, like, I mean, it seems to me like a lot of these adverse weird weather events are going to be more and more common. Just simply because, like, a lot of things also, we don't know the full extent. I mean, we know it's bad, and we know how, like, we have a good grasp of how effed things are, but at the end of the day, we don't have the full, complete understanding of the ramifications that things like climate change have. Earth is very complex. Earth systems are very complex, and there are domino effects, repercussions that we haven't even realized yet. So all these, like, weird adverse weather events and things like that, they could very well be. New Orleans is still recovering from the last hurricane, and they just had a tornado, and no one there has basements. Yikes. Yikes. Cringe. Alright, folks, before we get into the IPCC part of the stream, folks, we gotta take a second for some shills, okay? We gotta take a second to thank our sponsor, HelloFresh. If you guys notice on this... There we go. On this side over here, there is a little banner that says use code POGS, POG SC2534 to get up to 16 free meals, 3 surprise gift across your 6 HelloFresh boxes, plus free shipping on your first box. HelloFresh is the sponsor for this month. We really appreciate that, and it is something that I've used myself. HelloFresh offers so many recipes to choose from each week. Also, they do have pescatarian and veggie options each week, which include fresh produce sourced directly from farmers. With HelloFresh, products get to the farm to your doorstep in under a week for peak freshness. Look at that, folks. It is pretty affordable. And especially if you guys do what we did, which is basically save all the recipes. Save all the recipes once you're done. You can just do that and keep the recipes. They're not bad. I've had, like I said, I've used it before. Pretty positive experience with HelloFresh, and through Stream Elements they have given us that sponsor. So make sure you check that out. ! HelloFresh and use the code POGSE2534. Okay, really does help out the channel, and you can even forego giving Jeff Bezos more money, or giving Amazon more money, and just do it that way and support the channel that way. Yeah, I appreciate that. And of course, while we're at it, if you haven't already, hit that follow button. It really does help us out, and you get 5 free emotes. Look at that, 5 free emotes. And do us a quick favor, it takes 5 seconds, I promise. Go to the YouTubes if you're not there already. I see your YouTube chat. Hit the subscribe button and join the Discord for any updates on the channel. Thank you guys, appreciate it. Hey Kevin, how's it going? All right. Love the emotes, Yellow King. I'm doing tired. Well, I can't disagree with that. We are continuing our journey. Through the IPCC technical summary. I guess this is the phase of the stream where you can just consider it ASMR climate studies, all right? Learn about the latest climate IPCC report, Working Group 2, that just came out last month. The next one, Working Group 3, officially comes out next month. So this is a time where you pop in your earphones, your ear pods, your ear sets, as we go into climate ASMR. I think that's going to be the thing now, yeah? Alright, so last we left off was on page 35. Page 35, folks. Estimates of displacement from rapid onset extreme events exist. However, the range of estimates is large, as they largely depend on assumptions made about future emissions and socioeconomic development of trajectories. Oh, we went over this. I believe we already covered this, but, okay. Uncertainties about socioeconomic development are reflected in the wide range projected population displacements by 2050 in Central and South America, Sub-Saharan Africa, South Asia due to climate change ranging from 31 million to 143 million people. High confidence. Those are tens of millions, hundreds of millions of people, folks. Projections of number of people at risk of future displacement by sea level rise range from tens of millions to hundreds of millions by the end of the century. That's just sea level rise alone, okay? By the end of the century, which again, in the grand scheme of things, by the end of the century just means, what, 80 years? That's not very long in the grand scheme of things, depending on level of warmings and assumption about exposure. And again, that's just sea level rise. Never mind like the inability to live in places when it gets too hot, unsustainably, inhospitably hot. What about increases in flood zones to the point where it's just basically, for all intents and purposes, unlivable if you're constantly getting flooded? As climate risk intensifies, the need for planned relocation will increase to support those who are unable to move voluntarily. Medium confidence. Planned relocation will be increasingly required as climate change undermines livelihood, safety, and overall habitability, especially for coastal areas and small islands. Medium confidence. This will have implications for traditional livelihood practice, social cohesion, and knowledge systems that have inherent value as intangible culture, as well as introduce new risks for communities by amplifying existing and generating new vulnerabilities. High confidence. Under an inequality scenario, as as before, by 2030, the number of people living in extreme poverty will increase by 122 million from currently around 700 million. Medium confidence. Future climate change may increase in involuntary displacement, but severe impacts also undermine the capacity of households to use mobility as a coping strategy, causing high exposure to climate risk with consequences for basic survival, health, and well-being. High confidence. Yeah, I mean, clearly, if you're in a situation where you have no choice but to move, but unfortunately that also constitutes having the resources to move, that's kind of a problem. Essentially, you would be stuck. The COVID-19 pandemic is expected to increase the adverse consequences of climate change, since the financial consequences have led to shift in priorities and constraint vulnerability reduction. Medium confidence. That is a very good point that I believe we did not take into consideration. Like, there was some kind of blip for a moment there where the COVID pandemic created an avenue for maybe our ability to reduce emissions, but the reality is it just basically showed vulnerabilities in the current system that we have, and in order for us to deal with that, well, we've had to shift away our priorities, shift away our resources. And that does do damage. And even with current moderate climate change, vulnerable people will experience a farther erosion of livelihood security that can interact with humanitarian crises, such as displacement and involuntary migration, high confidence, and violence and armed conflict, and lead to social tipping points, which we've discussed multiple times. So this isn't something that, I just made up or anything like that. This is just something that is, well, self-evident, I would say. I mean, if your basic necessities for increasingly large groups of people are being hamstrung, like your ability to grow food, your ability to get water. I mean, these are things that it's just common sense. I almost want to say that it would inevitably pave the path for conflict. Under higher emission scenarios and increasing climate hazards, the potential for societal risk also increases. Medium confidence. Well, I mean, yeah. Lessons from COVID-19 risk management have implications for managing urban climate change risk. Limited evidence, high agreement. Indigenous people and local communities will experience change in cultural opportunities, low to medium confidence. Cultural heritage is already impacted by climate change and variability. Example, in Africa, small island developing states, and the Arctic, where heritage sites are exposed to future climate change risk. High confidence. Coastal erosion and sea level rise are projected to affect natural and cultural coastal heritage sites spread across 36 African countries. and all Arctic nations. Frequent drought episodes will lower groundwater tables and gradually expose highly valued archaeological sites to salt weathering and degradation. Coastal inundation and ocean acidification will intensify impacts on sacred sites, including burial grounds and corrosion of shipwrecks and underwater ruins. Climate change increased risks of violent conflict, primarily intrastate conflicts, by strengthening climate-sensitive drivers. Climate change may produce severe risks to peace within this century through climate variability and extremes, especially in contexts marked by low economic development, high economic dependence on climate-sensitive activities, high or increasing social marginalization, and fragile governance. Medium confidence. The largest impacts are expected in weather-sensitive communities with low resilience to climate extremes and high prevalence of underlying risk factors. Medium confidence trajectory that prioritizes economic growth, political rights, and sustainability are associated with lower conflict risk. Yes, that would make sense. CAC-CPS, how's it going? Is it CAC's-I? I hope I didn't ruin that name too bad. Climate change increased risks for larger number of growing cities and settlements across wider areas, especially in coastal and mountain regions, affecting an additional 2.5 billion, that's with a B, people residing in cities mainly in Africa and Asia by 2050. High confidence, again, that's 2050 is 30 years from now, folks. We'll be alive. I'll be alive, for sure. This is within our lifetime. In all cities and urban areas, projected risk will be faced from people, projected risks faced by people from climate-driven impacts has increased. High confidence. Many risks will not be felt evenly across cities and settlements or within cities. Communities and informal settlements will have higher exposure and lower capacity to adapt. High confidence. Most at risk are women and children, who make up the majority of populations of these settlements. High confidence. Risks to critical physical infrastructure in cities can be severe and pervasive under higher warming levels, potentially resulting in compound and cascading risk, and can disrupt livelihoods both within and across cities. High confidence. I mean, yeah, we've seen that here. We've seen that here, and that's not, we don't have to go too far. We can point out to the California brownouts and Texas having to shut off electricity. The same with water. Water is being heavily rationed in the Pacific West, in the Pacific Northwest. California just reduced, I think, 5 to 15%. In coastal cities and settlements, risk to people and infrastructure will get progressively worse in a changing climate, sea level rise, and with ongoing coastal development, very high confidence. An additional 2.5 billion people, again with a B, are projected to live in urban areas by 2050, with up to 90% of this increase concentrated in regions of Asia and Africa. High confidence. By 2050, 64% and 60% of Asia and Africa's population, respectively, will be urban. Growth is most pronounced in smaller and medium-sized urban settlements of up to 1 million people. High confidence. Asian and African urban areas are considered high-risk locations from projected climate extreme events, unplanned urbanization, and rapid land use change. High confidence. These could amplify pre-existing stresses related to poverty, informality, exclusion, and governance, such as in African cities. High confidence. Climate change increases heat stress risks in cities. High confidence, and amplifies the urban heat island across Asian cities at 1.5 degrees Celsius and 2 degrees Celsius warming levels, both substantially larger than under present climates. Medium confidence, which is all but guaranteed at this point. I don't see us. I don't see us making the necessary aggressive actions necessary to keep that 1.5. Urban population's exposure to heat in Africa is projected to increase from 2 billion persons per day per year in 1985 to 2005 to 45 billion person days by the 2060. What? That's That's a lot. And again, 2060 is what, 38 years from now? That's within our lifetime. Well, within mine anyways. 1.7 degrees global warming with low population growth and 95 billion person days. 2.8 degrees Celsius global warming with medium high population growth. Medium confidence. Risk driven by floods and droughts will also increase in cities. High confidence. Urban population exposed to severe droughts in West Africa will increase. 65.3 plus or minus 34.1 million at 1.5 degrees Celsius warming and increase further at 2 degrees Celsius. I mean, yeah. Urban medium confidence. Urban land in flood zones and dry lands exposed to high frequency floods is expected to increase by as much as 2,600% and 627 respectively across East, West, and Central Africa by 2030. High risk from temperature and precipitation extremes are projected for almost all Asian cities under RCP 8.5 medium confidence, impacting on fresh water availability, regional food security, human health, and industrial outputs. Yep, well, globally, urban key infrastructure systems are increasingly sites of risk creation that potentially drive compounding and cascading risks. Unplanned rapid urbanization is a major driver of risk, particularly where increasing climate-driven risk affect key infrastructure and potentially result in compounding and cascading risk as cities expand into coastal and mountain regions prone to flooding or landslides that disrupt transportation networks, or where water and energy resources are inadequate to meet the needs of growing settlements. High confidence, these infrastructural risks expand beyond city boundaries, and climate-related transport and energy infrastructure damages are projected to be a significant financial burden for African countries, reaching to tens to hundreds of billions of USD under moderate and high emission scenarios. Jesus. High confidence. Projected changes in both the hydrological cycle and the cryosphere will threaten urban water infrastructure and resource management in most regions. Very high confidence. South and Southeast Asian coastal cities can experience significant increases in average annual economic losses between 2005 and 2050 due to flooding, with very high losses in East Asian cities under RCP 8.5. High confidence. By 2050, permafrost thaw in the Pan-Arctic is projected to impact 69% of infrastructure, more than 1,200 settlements, 36,000 buildings, and 4 million people in Europe under RCP 4.5. In small islands, degraded terrestrial ecosystems, decreased resource provision, example would be potable water, and amplifies the vulnerability of island inhabitants. High confidence projections suggest that 350 million plus or minus 158.8 million more people in urban areas will be exposed to water scarcity from severe droughts at 1.5 degrees Celsius warming, and 410.7 million plus or minus 213.5 at 2 degrees Celsius warming. Low confidence. Jesus. So even at the low end scenario, things don't look that good. Even at the low end scenarios. The characteristics of coastal cities and settlements that means that climate-driven risks to people and infrastructure, and many of them are already high and will get progressively worse over the 21st century and beyond. High confidence. These risks are driven by disproportionately high exposure of multiple assets, economic activities, and large coastal populations concentrated in narrow coastal zones. Climate change risks, including sea level rise, interact in intricate ways with non-climate drivers of coastal change such as land subsidence, continued infrastructure development in coastal floodplains, the rise of asset values and landward development adversely impacting coastal ecosystems to shape future risk in coastal settlements. High confidence. Oh man. Instead of realizing or coming to the realization that what we're doing by continuing to develop in these coastal areas is just furthering the problem. Across sectors and regions, market and non-market damages and adaptation costs will be lower at 1.5 degrees Celsius compared to 3 degrees Celsius or higher. 3 degrees Celsius or higher global warming levels. High confidence. Recent estimates of projected global damages of climate impacts are overall higher than previous estimates. Jesus. And generally increase with global average temperature. High confidence. However, the spread in the estimates of magnitude of these changes is substantial and does not allow for robust range to be established. High confidence. Non-market, non-economic damages and adverse impacts on livelihoods will be concentrated in regions and populations that are already more vulnerable. High confidence. Socioeconomic drivers and more inclusive development will largely determine the extent of these damages. High confidence. Without limiting warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius global warming levels, many key risks are projected to intensify rapidly in almost all regions of the world, causing damage to assets and infrastructures, losses to economic sectors, and entailing large recovery and adaptation costs. Yeah, like this is the same. Like, it's like we learned nothing from the from any crisis. The latest one being the COVID one. The earlier we address this problem, the less expensive. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of the cure, as they say. The thing that you're supposed to gather from all this is that failure to address this will just continue to make these things just exponentially worse, exponentially more expensive, exponentially harder to adapt. So the lesson would be then to address this problem now, while we still have what little time. Severe risks are most likely in developing regions that are already hotter and in regions and communities with a large portion of workforce employed in highly exposed industries like agriculture, fishery, forestry, tourism, outdoor labor. In addition to market damages and disaster management costs, substantial costs of climate inaction are projected for human health. High confidence. At higher levels of warming, climate impact will pose risks to financial and insurance markets, especially if climate risks are incompletely internalized. Medium confidence, with adverse implications for stability of markets. Low confidence. While the overall economic consequences are clearly negative, opportunities may arise for a few economic sectors and regions, such as from longer growing seasons or reduced sea ice, primarily in northern latitudes. Medium to high confidence. Estimates of global economic damages and losses generally increase non-linearity with warming and are larger than previous estimates. High confidence. Recent estimates have increased relative to range reported in AR5, the previous IPCC report, though there is low agreement and significant spread within across methodology types, statistical examples, statistical, structural, and meta-analysis, resulting in the inability to identify a best estimate or robust range to rule out the largest impacts. High confidence. Under high warming, which is less than 4 degrees Celsius, and limited adaptation to magnitude of decline in annual global GDP in 2100 relative to non-global warming scenarios exceeds the economic losses during the Great Recession of 2008-2009 and the COVID pandemic in 2020. Yeah. Okay. Much smaller effects are estimated for less warming, lower vulnerability, and more adaptation. Medium confidence. Regional estimates of GDP damages vary. High confidence. Severe risks are more likely in typically harder developing countries because of non-linearities in the relationship between economic damages and temperature. For Africa, medium confidence for Africa, GDP damages are projected to be negative across models and approaches. High confidence. All right, we did it, folks. We got to page 38. Unfortunately, folks, that is all the time I have today. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you so much for all the support. I appreciate you guys. You guys are what makes the channel grow. Again, if you guys haven't already, please make sure you hit the follow button on your way out. It really does help us out. Make sure you hit the YouTubes, all right? It takes 5 seconds, I promise. All right, exclamation YouTube. Make sure you join the Discords as well. Sorry, Discord. Make sure you join the Discord to keep up with the channel. And don't forget to have an amazing day. Thanks for helping me get through my work morning. I appreciate that. Thank you, Samurai and the Kind Dragon. And don't forget to support our sponsor who has been wonderful. I appreciate that. Thank you guys so much. As always, please stay safe. Please take care of each other. I love you all, and I hope to see you guys in the next one. See ya. All right, folks, hang tight. We're heading out in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. See ya.